Today, my group, Mickey, Molly, Martin, and I, Maximus, will be presenting our project on skin diseases caused by microorganisms. Our goal is to help you understand how different types of pathogens, bacteria, and viruses can affect the skin, how these diseases spread, and how they can be treated and or prevented. Our project is divided into two main sections. The first section focuses on skin diseases caused by bacteria, with a focus on anthrax disease. The second section explores skin diseases caused by viruses, focusing on chickenpox. Together, we'll highlight their symptoms, causes, and prevention methods to better understand how microorganisms impact human health. Today, I will be talking about anthrax and the bacterium that causes it, Bacillus anthracis. Anthrax is a very serious disease which is found primarily in soil. It primarily affects livestock and wild animals, but humans can also become infected as well. According to the CDC in 2025, most people get sick with anthrax when they come into contact with infected animals or contaminated animal products. This happens in farming, handling animal hides, or even during meat processing. The bacterium is gram-positive, aerobic, and forms spores, which makes it extremely tough. These spores can survive in harsh conditions for decades. There are three major types of anthrax in humans, each based on how the spores enter the body. The first and most common type is cutaneous anthrax. This happens when anthrax spores enter through a cut or break in the skin. This happens usually while handling infected animals or animal products. The second type is inhalation anthrax, which occurs when someone breathes in anthrax spores. These spores travel to the lymph nodes in the chest, where the infection begins. It's the most deadliest form of anthrax if not treated quickly. And last, we have gastrointestinal anthrax, which happens after eating raw or undercooked meat from infected animals. This type affects the digestive system and can also be very severe. To sum up, anthrax is a very powerful disease caused by resilient bacterium, and understanding how it spreads is a key way to preventing the infection, especially in environments where exposure to animals is very common. Now let's take a look at the signs and symptoms of anthrax, as well as who's most likely to contract it. According to the Cleveland Clinic, individuals most at risk include farmers and livestock workers, slaughterhouse workers, military members, and veterinarians. These groups are more likely to be exposed because anthrax bacteria can live in soil and infect grazing animals like cattle, sheep, and goats. Farmers and veterinarians work directly with animals and may come into contact with infected carcasses, hides, or wool. Slaughterhouse workers are at risk through handling animal parts, especially if proper protective equipment isn't used correctly. Military members, especially those deployed to regions where anthrax is more common or used as a biological weapon, face increased risk due to potential airborne exposure during attacks or outbreaks. Now let's talk about how the disease progresses. The Mayo Clinic explains that symptoms of anthrax usually begin within 7 days of exposure to the bacteria. That means the disease tends to develop quickly, often within the week, making early recognition very critical. There are three main forms of anthrax, each with distinct symptoms. First, we have cutaneous anthrax, which affects the skin. This is the most common form. People may notice swelling sores, and these sores often develop a black center. This is usually caused by direct contact with infected animals or materials, as shown in the photo. Second is gastrointestinal anthrax, which occurs when someone consumes contaminated meat. Key symptoms include blood in the stool or vomit, along with a swollen neck, indicating more severe internal infections. Finally, there's inhalation anthrax, which is the most dangerous form. It can lead to severe symptoms like shock, coughing of blood, and flu-like signs. Because the early symptoms resemble a common flu, it can be difficult to diagnose quickly, making this form especially deadly if not treated immediately. In summary, anthrax can present in different ways depending how a person is exposed. Knowing the symptoms and understanding who's at risk are crucial steps in early detection and treatment for anthrax.
When testing for cutaneous anthrax, it is required that a sample of blood is taken, or fluid, from a sore that is formed by the damaged skin. The most common method of testing is sending the sample to a lab to be cultured at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius and analyzed to find the sample. The fastest method, though, is running the sample through a real-time PCR that targets the strands of Bacillus anthrax in the sample and replicates it to a point where it can be easily identifiable. The last method of testing is placing antibiotics such as ciprofloxacin and doxycycline onto an agar plate containing the anthrax and analyzing the zone of inhibition. Treatments are relatively simple. It is the aforementioned ciprofloxacin and doxycycline that is delivered either orally or intravenously every 12 hours. These antibiotics work because they are lipophilic, meaning that they can easily pass through the fat layer of the bacteria, where instead of killing the bacteria, it blocks the growth proteins, preventing it from reproducing, eventually killing it off. The first recorded use of anthrax was in the 1870s by Robert Koch to demonstrate that specific bacterium caused a specific disease, instead of disease being caused by a miasma that was created by rot. Later, Louis Pasteur developed the first vaccine for anthrax in 1881 by testing a weakened version of the disease and discovering that it can be used to create a vaccine. Then, during World War II, there's evidence that the Germans had used anthrax to infect and kill the English livestock that were to be used as trade between the Allied forces. The British also had their own plan called Operation Vegetarian to kill and destroy all of the German livestock, but that was later not used because it was deemed too extreme. Later, in 2001, there was the terrorist attack in the US using spores that were sent in the mail, developing both cases of cutaneous and inhalational anthrax. Being one of the oldest recorded diseases, the death toll is incalculable. We have seen evidence of it back in 700 BC during Mesopotamia, and possibly as one of the 10 plagues listed in the Bible. The death rate, though, of cutaneous anthrax, if left untreated, is 5 to 20%, depending on the strength of the patient's immune system. But if they receive immediate treatment, then the death rate reduces to 1%. Thank you.
Many of us have heard of chickenpox or even had it ourselves, but what really causes it and why does it spread so easily? We are going to explore the varicella zoster virus, the tiny germ behind those itchy red bumps. Chickenpox is a highly contagious skin disease caused by the varicella zoster virus, or also known as VCV. It's considered a primary infection that occurs in someone who hasn't been exposed to the virus before, meaning they never had chickenpox or even viruses similar to it, such as shingles. Now, looking at the biology behind it, the varicella zoster virus specifically targets skin cells known as keratinocytes. Once the virus infects these cells, it actually alters their gene and protein expression. These changes interfere with normal cell growth and function, especially within the pathways that are unique to the epidermis, which is also the outermost layer of the skin. As the virus replicates within the skin, it usually causes the formation of blisters, which are a key sign of chickenpox. The fluid inside those blisters contains the virus, which allows it to spread to other cells or even to other people. It's important to note that chickenpox is a very specific host range. The varicella zoster virus only infects humans because it doesn't affect animals because it's uniquely adapted to human cells. Now let's talk about the signs, symptoms, and transmission of chickenpox. People who have never had chickenpox with a vaccine can become very sick if they're exposed. Early symptoms usually appear 1 to 2 days before the rash shows up. These include a fever, tiredness, loss of appetite, and headache. After that, more common symptoms begin to appear, most noticeably the rash. It often starts in the chest, back, or face, and then spreads throughout the entire body. The rash turns into small, itchy, fluid-filled blisters, which later form scabs within about a week. In some cases, a person can have as many as 500 blisters. Chickenpox is highly contagious. It spreads mainly through direct contact with the fluid from the blisters. This can be through respiratory droplets when someone coughs or sneezes, or by touching contaminated items like clothing or bedding. Since it spreads so easily, it's really important to isolate anyone with chickenpox and maintain good hygiene so all the blisters have scabbed over.
Testing and treatment. Chickenpox is usually easy to recognize just by looking at the rash, which appears as itchy, blister-like spots that appear all over the body. But if a doctor isn't completely sure, they can run lab tests to confirm it. There are several important tests used to diagnose chickenpox. The most common one is called the polymerase chain reaction, or PCR. This test detects the viral DNA itself, meaning it can confirm the presence of the virus even in very small amounts. It's one of the most accurate ways to identify an active infection. Next is the direct fluorescent antibody test, or DFA test. With this method, a small sample is taken from one of the skin lesions, and a special fluorescent dye is used to attach to the virus. Under a microscope, the virus will glow, showing that the infection is chickenpox. Finally, there's the serology test. This one doesn't look for the virus directly, but instead checks for antibodies in the blood. It helps determine if someone has immunity from a past infection or vaccination. For treatment, most people can recover at home. The main goal is to rest, drink lots of fluids, and manage fever or itching. Calamine lotion, oatmeal baths, and cool compresses can help relieve that itching. It's really important to avoid giving aspirin to kids with chickenpox because it can cause a dangerous reaction called Ray's syndrome. If someone has a weak immune system or is pregnant, doctors might give antiviral medicine to help fight the disease. The best way to prevent chickenpox today is through the vaccine, which was introduced in 1995 and has made a huge difference in reducing cases. Chickenpox has been around for hundreds of years. It was first described back in the 1500s, and for a long time, people thought it was just a mild form of smallpox. It wasn't until the late 1700s that scientists figured out it was actually caused by a different virus. Before the chickenpox vaccine came out in 1995, millions of people got infected every year. In the US alone, there were about 4 million cases annually, with around 10,000 hospitalizations and 100 to 150 deaths, mostly children. Geographically, chickenpox spread most easily in temperate climates like in North America and Europe, while tropical areas saw fewer cases. However, adults there often got more severe infections. Since the vaccine became common, chickenpox cases have dropped by over 90%. Today, it's rare and usually very mild, especially in countries with strong vaccination programs. Nurses play a vital role in caring for patients with skin diseases like anthrax and chickenpox by providing both medical care and emotional support. From a Christian worldview, nursing is more than a job. It is a calling to serve others with compassion, following the example of Jesus, who cared for the sick and comforted the suffering. Nurses treat symptoms, manage pain, and educate patients about prevention and recovery. But they also offer hope and encouragement during times of fear and uncertainty. Through their compassion and dedication, nurses demonstrate Christ's love in practical ways. As 1 John 3:18 reminds us, "Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth." Every gentle word, every act of care, and every prayer shared at a patient's bedside reflects that truth. Caring for patients is not only about healing the body, it's also about showing love, preserving dignity, and reminding each person of their worth in God's eyes.